Hi guys, in this video we will learn about radicals and fraction exponents. So, reviewing about fraction exponents, okay, so 16 raised to the 1/2, what that means is what number, when it's raised to the 2, gives 16. So filling in that number is 4. So that means that 16 raised to the 1/2 is equal to 4. Okay, so in the next one, 27 raised to the 1/3 really asks the question, what number, when it's raised instead of to the third, when it's raised to the 3, equals 27? So that number is 3, because 3 raised to the third power is 27. So the answer to the question is 3. Now, another way to ask the question, instead of 16 raised to the 1/2, we could ask the square root of 16, because this question asks what number multiplied by itself is 16. So the answer to this question, what number multiplied by itself is 16, is 4, because 4 times 4 is 16. Notice that this is the same question as 16 raised to the 1/2 is exactly the same as the square root of 16. Another way of writing that is this 2 in the denominator can be written here in what's called the radical. Okay, and that number there is called the index. So for the second question over here, we would say that we would write this as, so a radical sign with 27, but instead of a 2 going in the small spot, we'll put a 3 there. And that question says, what number multiplied by itself is 27? So that answer is 3, because 3 raised to the third is 27. To figure out this problem, we have that the numerator is to raise and the denominator is to root. So if we first find what's called the fourth root of 16, this 4 goes in this index spot right there. So what raised to the 4th power is 16? The answer to that question is 2. But then we're raising, right here, we're raising 2 to the third and getting 8 for a final answer. So on the calculator, if we were to do 16 raised to the 3/4 in parentheses, we would get an answer of 8. What's the value of each expression? So for the first one, it says the index is 2. So that means what number multiplied by itself is 49. So that number is 7, or the square root of 49 is 7. The second question says, what number raised to the 4th is 625? So just by guess and check on the calculator, you can see that 5 raised to the 4th is 625. For the next one, it says, what number raised to the third is 216? So that number we could figure out is 6. So 6 is what's pronounced the cube root of 216. Versus this over here, we had the square root of 49. And reminding us we don't need that index of 2. If there's no number there, it automatically means the square root. In general, what we see is that the bottom of the fraction is the index of a radical. So, for instance, 8 to the 1/3 is equal to the cube root of 8. So these numbers, the denominator of the fraction, exponent, is equal to the index of the radical. And a radical is this radical sign here, and the index would be that small number there. So in general, we can say that any base raised to the c over d exponent is equal to this d here is this d here, and the c stays with the a. So basically we can change the denominator to the index. These directions say to write each expression in radical form. Okay, so what I want to do is circle the denominator. That becomes the index of 3. And then I'm just going to copy down the rest of the problem. The rest of the problem was a squared, so that a squared goes under the radical. Okay? In the next one, it's 25x to the 1/2. Okay, so the key here is that this exponent only applies to the x, not the 25. So I'm going to pretend that the 25 is not even there temporarily, and just do the problem x to the 1/2. Okay, so then that denominator of 2 becomes the index, and I bring down the rest of the problem x to the 1, or simply x. Then now I'm going to carry down the 25. So the answer is 25 square root of x to the 1, which is simply 25 pronounced radical x. Okay? And the next one, this exponent of 2/3 applies to the whole 8x. So I cannot ignore that 8. So I would write a radical sign, and that denominator 3 becomes the index. And then writing down the rest of the problem, 8x to the 2. We would leave it like that. Doing this one, this exponent of 1/2 applies to the whole 98x, so I'm going to go right to my radical. This denominator becomes the index, and then copy down the rest. So the rest is 98x raised to the 1. Well, you don't even need that parentheses there. And actually, I do not even have to write the 2 there because the 2 is implied when I don't write it. So there's my answer. For the next one, this denominator of 3 operates on the entire 24x. So if I put the radical, put in the 3, and then put in the rest of the problem, 24x in parentheses raised to the 2. Comparing to this one where the 3/4 only applies to the x, not to the 5. So putting in my radical, denominator of 4 becomes the index. I'm going to copy down the x to the 3. Then I'm going to bring the 5 out front. So my final answer, 5 4th root of x to the 3rd. Going backwards now, we want to write each expression in exponential form. So the index becomes the fraction denominator. So I'll copy down this x to the 4th, but then it's going to be over 3 because that 3 of the index becomes the denominator. Similarly for this one, so this one does not have an index, so I can write in a 2 because it's automatically a square root or a 2 root. Okay, so this one says that it is, copy down the 2x, that whole 2x is raised to the 4, and the denominator is this 2. Well, now when I look at the problem, I have 4 divided by 2. So I can do that. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So I'll get parentheses 2x raised to the 4 divided by 2 is 2. And now I can do this problem because it's just 2x in parentheses raised to the 2. So I can distribute the exponents. 2 to the 2, x to the 2, which is 4x to the second for my final answer. So for this problem, I'm going to copy down this part that's under the radical, called the radicand. All right, so if I copy that down, 8x raised to the 2. This index becomes the denominator, so it's over 3. All right, so now this is a problem I can do because I can distribute the exponent and get 8 to the 2/3 x to the 2/3. So 8 raised to the 2/3 is 4. Bring down, so that's what 8 to the 2/3 is. So bring down the x to the 2/3, and you have your final answer, 4x to the 2/3. For this last one, okay, so copy down what's in the, right there, 625 y to the 3rd, and now that whole thing has a fraction exponent of 1 over 4. That's important that it's not 625y to the 3/4 because this 3 only applies to the y and not to the 625. But distributing that 1/4, I'll have 625 raised to the 1/4 y multiplying exponents to the 3/4. So 625 to the 1/4 is 5. So I have 5y to the 3/4 is my final answer. Thanks, and I'll see you in class.